Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order because we have a lot to cover this evening, and we're going to welcome those of you.
Bless you. Bless you.
Oh, the allergy season is awful this year. Want to welcome everyone here this evening, and we're going to start tonight with agenda number 1, which is board and commission interviews, and we have none, so we can get through number 1. Number 2 is to review the regular agenda. Is there anything on there that needs to be covered? If not, we will move into the meeting issues and updates, and I think I'll just start with Laura.
Thanks, Mayor. Sustainability Commission met last night or late afternoon. You have in your packet their letter requesting that we have the mayor sign mayors for 100% clean energy. And the rationale that they propose in that letter is it's a way to try and leverage Ameren to take more of an interest and invest more in clean energy. So I guess the question is, do we schedule that? Are we okay with that? I'm not quite sure what to do with that from here.
I think we probably need a little more information about what it is that I'm agreeing to do.
It is symbolic because, as a matter of fact, the official site and the official Sierra Club initiative has closed. And so they want to add us because they want more numbers when they go to Ameren to present this as cities that want more clean energy.
Well, it's up to the council. You want more information, or do you want to just approve this, or?
No.
I'm okay with it.
You
Yep.
Yeah. Laura, you're okay with it?
Yeah, and I have spent some time digging into it, so.
Okay.
I'm
well,
in.
We'll trust you on it, and we'll go ahead and figure out how to sign that. Go ahead.
All right, so second thing from sustainability is I sent all of you today, or actually, Katie and Jennifer sent you on my behalf a link to the Collinsville Sustainability Plan.
Yes.
The Sustainability Commission would like to take on a months-long endeavor of creating a sustainability plan in the model of Collinsville. Collinsville actually borrowed theirs from Granite City, so we can trace it back to some origin that I'm not sure of. And the plan development would include talking with staff from all departments, boards and commissions, public engagement. And I think I suggested to them before they go down this road that they probably needed some direction from us about whether that was a good investment of their time. You can look at the Collinsville plan, and we can also have sustainability leadership come in and talk about what that might look like. They had a visit at their meeting yesterday from the deputy city manager of Collinsville, who talked about the process and the content of that report.
I think it would be useful to get something from the Sustainability Commission about exactly what they wanted to do and what it involved and who it involved as a first step.
That's great. So I guess that means adding one more thing to the list of work session kinds of things that we'll do. And so I think Jamie Hassemeyer, and I'm not sure, I think there was one other person who wanted to come in and help us understand what the goals were and what they might undertake. And then Emerson and I were both at the Old Webster Trade Association this morning. A couple of reminders I'll give Emerson, and you can let me know, you can fill in whatever I forget. Girls Night Out, the third Thursday of the month, special Old Webster shopping event starts this week and will proceed through the summer. So they're pulling that together. The street dance, they believe, has been approved. I'm looking at Mara because I know they're still talking to you about that, but they're very optimistic that that'll happen on June 19th. And they are optimistic for Jazz Fest on September 18th as well. They have a record number of members in the Old Webster Trade Association, 64, which is the highest they believe they've had. And they're going to stay on Zoom for a little while longer, but have started the conversation about in-person meetings as well. And that's it for me.
Good. Okay, Sarah.
I don't have any updates today.
Pam.
Yes, Plan Commission staff reported that the proposed Douglas Hill renovations is scheduled for a public hearing at the June 7th Plan Commission meeting. Staff also reported that the hearing will remain open in order to allow additional comments. At this point, there are 75 comments. Also on the agenda, June 7th, is the continuation of the public hearing. This is the second public hearing on the zoning code text amendments for the multifamily dwelling regulations as a permitted use in the C and D commercial districts. Does anybody have any questions?
Mara's going to give us an update on this, on the steps going forward. So
Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good. Emerson,
No updates, Mayor.
David.
I got nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Let's see. I guess we've got all the council members, Neil and Marie. Marie.
Thank you. Just a few things. Laura mentioned in-person meetings and discussion of, and so we're clearly back for in-person council meetings, but not quite ready to bring the public back yet until the CDC in St. Louis County changes the vaccination rules and that sort of thing. But we've had some members of the public ask, so I wanted to share that, and that we will continue making meetings available via Zoom. And as soon as we can get the public back, we will certainly do so. I wanted to give an update on the HR manager interviews. I've also had a couple of questions about that. So we're having second rounds of interviews tomorrow. So provide more updates. Keitha Troy, who I hope you all know, but she currently works in finances, helping with some of the HR functions for right now. So a big round of applause to Keitha, because we really appreciate her doing that. Just a reminder to the general public that's listening that the June 1st is another budget meeting, council budget meeting, and I believe Katie and the clerk's office has noticed that as well. And then lastly, Jenny will be reaching out to each of the council members regarding your council webpage to set that up for you to get pictures, learn what type of information you would on it. So please expect that in the next couple of weeks. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. The PCEB met last Saturday and had a retreat among the members who were there, and it was very productive and a good discussion, and some really good building relationships among folks. So that was pretty good. I wanted to give you an update on the SG Collaborative project. At the last meeting, we talked about the development strategies report. We talked about the fact that that would be available to the public, but we have no further information. So we want the public to know that we have received nothing more to share with anybody. And as soon as we do receive something more, we certainly will share that. Also, with regard to the SG Collaborative, Mara is here this evening to give us an update on some of the next steps going forward, particularly with regard to zoning.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have already in and have started reviewing the submittal from SG Collaborative. All the department heads for the various departments have been reviewing it. They've given initial questions to the planning department that we're going to be integrating into our first staff report. We have put together a mailing list of everyone within 500 feet. This is way more extensive than we usually send for a rezoning. We typically send 185 feet. I think Danny has said it's a couple hundred letters that will be going out starting this week. We will also be putting signs on the property per state statute requirements tomorrow, which will identify the meeting that is upcoming. We have been gathering all the feedback that's come in so far, and we will offer the opportunity for either people to have us read their comments into the record, or should they wish their comments not to be read in the record and they'd like to speak instead, they have that opportunity to raise their hand and speak at the meeting. Knowing how much and how long that's going to take just to get through those comments, we've made very clear in the letters to everyone that we are continuing the hearing to the next meeting, and we put the date of the next meeting also in that letter to make sure that people knew that those were multiple opportunities. This first meeting is going to probably be much more basic information.
Date and time of the first.
Sorry,
meeting.
the first meeting is on June. I should know this by now,
7th.
but my date, 7th, is that Monday, June
Yes.
7th? June 7th at 7 p.m. via Zoom.
7 p.m. via
7
Zoom.
p.m.
All right.
via Zoom. And then the second meeting that would be happening after that is, because of the 4th of July, is on the second Monday of the month. And that one would be on July 12th. So we have both of those coming up. We do normally only put the packets up the week prior to Plan Commission. Due to the fact that we have the holiday weekend before that, we are trying extremely hard to get it up the Wednesday before that. So normally it's about 6 days in advance. We're going to try to put it up much further in advance than we have done in the past for this first one. Any questions?
Do you anticipate that the this will close on July 12th, or do you anticipate that there will be a number of meetings around this topic?
I anticipate a number of meetings, and it will just depend on how comfortable the Plan Commission is in their ability to feel that all their questions have been answered and that the public has been able to speak. We will request that people, if they've already spoken once and they have no new information to add, that they do not try to speak at every single meeting in order for us to continue to facilitate moving forward.
And then once the Planning Commission makes some decisions, it will move on to council for additional public hearings, correct?
That is correct. And we would anticipate that it would be at City Council for multiple hearings also in order for it to continue and have the ability for people to discuss.
Okay, and so that could be the fall, correct? By the
I
time-
would anticipate that it will definitely be the fall.
Okay, great. I think that we wanted to make sure that the public had an idea of the steps going forward. Somewhere in there, hopefully, we will have the development strategies reports to give or discuss and offer. So, but we, as I said, this is where we are at the moment. Good, good.
Any other questions? Okay, see you all a little later.
Thank you. Thanks very much. All right. So now we can move on to our topics this evening. And our first topic has to do with Kalia. And I think we have our police chief here.
We do. Chief Curtis, do you want to? Feels so strange stepping to podiums when we've just all been talking into the camera.
Thanks. Mayor Council, I just wanted to briefly give the results.
Pull
of
your
our-
mic up.
Good.
Okay, just, yeah.
Briefly give you the results of our assessment. In November of this year, we had our on-site assessment team of creditors from CLIA. This spring in March, we had a full board hearing and we successfully received our 6th accreditation. With that goes a meritorious award for a department who has been accredited for 15 or more continuous years. We began accreditation in 2002. As you know, we're well ahead of the curve for the what is now basically an environment where you have to be accredited. Excuse me. We met over 400 standards with no issues, and it's a credit to the many hours of work by our accreditation manager, our staff, and certainly the officers who provide service to the city of Webster goes, and it helps us meet our commitment to provide and meet the expectations of the community. So I wanted to be aware of that. I think it's like I said, a great credit to the department, to the officers that work very hard, and to our commitment to try and provide the best professional service that we can.
So thank you for that, Chief Curtis. And I think he's underplaying the value of it because it really is a huge accomplishment, particularly from 2002. And it says a lot about the staff that we have working in the Webster Groves Police Department. It says a lot to the commitment in terms of training, community engagement, and you said over 400 standards that have to be met.
That's correct.
So just a huge congratulations. It's quite a credit.
And Chief, wait a minute.
Can I just ask,
I think we have other questions and comments. David.
I was just gonna ask, can you explain a little bit about CLIA, like who devises the policies and procedures which they review?
Sure. CLIA initially was formed by the ICP, which is the International Chiefs of Police, NOBLE, which is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Officers, and the National Missouri Police Chiefs Association. It's based upon the best practices that they've arrived at in looking at many different departments and many different aspects of what's important in police work. I mean, they've also taken things from the from PERF as well. So It's an organization, there are several organizations that have come up with the best practices for police departments and also for all the policies and procedures, just even for the minor operations that help make sure you have a professionally run police department.
Gotcha. And how many, this might be a question you might not know, Chief, and I apologize, but like of the police departments in the nation, how many are CALIA certified or percentage wise, do you know?
The last time that I knew the percentage, it was somewhere along the line of, I think, like maybe 10 or 11%.
A very small number.
Right. Before it became a requirement here and before it became mandatory, we were one of initially 7 departments, municipal departments in Missouri that were accredited and have been for quite some time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chief.
And we've been a model for that for other municipalities in St. Louis.
I believe we've been a leader in excuse me, in that, again, our recognition of it and it being necessary to have a professional police department is very well established.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for all your work. Most appreciated. All right, our next topic is the freestyle pool pass, and I believe that's Mr. Davis is going to give us some background on this.
Good evening, everyone. Most of the information was shared in the memo that's in the backup for you, but Dr. Peoples and I met with representatives from the Webster Rock Hill Ministries, the Alliance for Interracial Dignity, and the Webster Road School District a week or so back to finalize the details on the freestyle pool pass for this summer. It's a program that those 3 entities have put together and fundraised for to provide individual day passes for students in the district, school district, to come to the Webster Groves Aquatic Center this summer. So far, they've raised more than $10,000 to fund that program. They're hoping to give 4 passes to kids K through 6th grade, is that correct? And then 2 passes for all kids 7th grade through 12th grade. Those passes should be going out this week to the school children. And then at the end of that, they're going to return the remaining passes or give the remaining passes over to the rec complex. We'll have them at the desk available to be given out to additional folks that need them after they've used up their first round of passes. That's kind of the gist of the program. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Or
Scott, I just
might
want to
jump
make
in.
one comment. The pass is for the community, not necessarily for the students of the school district. So if there's a need in our community for any student, they can receive a pass.
How will you keep track of the unused ones besides the ones that people turn back in?
We're only going to issue passes we can back up with funding. So we got funding for 100 passes. That's how we'll distribute it. And once the funding runs out, we won't issue any more passes.
So Parks and Rec will be collecting those and then getting the money from you after that? Okay.
You'll turn them in, we'll convert them over to.
I recall seeing that. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, we'll collect them at the pool entrance gate.
Okay.
Staff will treat it just as if someone's paying a daily admission with cash check
Right.
charge or whatever. Then we'll grab those passes and tally them up and send them back into the Webster Rock Hill Ministries with an invoice, and then they'll reimburse for the passes that are used.
I thought about it, would have brought a pass today, but on the back of the pass, it indicates, if you're from Shrewsbury, Rock Hill, Webster Groves, or other.
Nice.
So between the school district issuing the passes, Webster Groves, Webster Rock Hill Ministry, we'll check if it's a Rock Hill student or either a Webster.
So this is a good way of getting data for potentially our new pool.
There will be good data. And while I got the mic, I just really want to thank the community. It really came out really strong in a matter of weeks. And you've got our goal plus some, and it's still coming in.
I think that's an important point to make because this is going through the Webster Grove School District for people to understand that these are private funds that are funding this, and this is not city funds that's funding this, because, we always have that. How about the kids who go to private schools but live here? So I think that's a really important point to be made that this is coming from private funding.
And to add on to that, Mayor, not only it's not coming from the city, it's not coming from Webster Rock Hill Ministries, nor the school district. Completely 100% sponsored by the community.
By the community through private funding. So if there's no income limit on this at all, there's no income determination as to whether you get a pass or not.
No.
Okay.
Can I just ask, when someone comes to the front desk and asks, are they giving you identification or are they just handed a pass?
We're still waiting for the final details that are supposed to be given to the rec department by this week so that we can train staff on it. But no, we won't be asking for any ID or anything like that. They'll just be, if we've got passes available, we'll give those passes and then they can check on the back what city they're from and they'll be invoiced depending on what they check there.
Thanks for being willing to support that.
Sure.
And when we tried to design a process to be less impact on Scott and his staff, so they don't have to go through any type of process of indicating this one don't, this one do. So it should be an easy process.
Great. Thank you. Thanks
Thank you
very
all.
much, Scott. And thanks, Emerson, for your leadership on this. This is certainly work. All right, we will do our budget follow-up now, and certainly this will be a good discussion coming forward. We've got about an hour, and there's a lot we can cover.
Before you get started, Eric, and so Mayor, just a really big thanks to Eric for putting this together. So today is his 1-week anniversary. And he has dived on in and spent the past weekend here. And one of the things that I shared regarding bringing Eric on board is that he is very familiar with the New World financial system. And it has been incredibly helpful for him to go in and be able to look at not just only this year's proposed budget, but past budgets, and to be able to work with our finance team, primarily work with Marlene. It's been incredibly helpful. And want to give Marlene a shout out and continued thanks as well. She apparently wanted to play golf this evening. So she asked if she could skip out, and she will join us for future ones. But anyway, thank you, Eric.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, Eric Peterson, Assistant City Manager. Pleased to be here tonight to talk about the budget conversation and continue our work from last week ahead of the public hearing on the 1st. We have a couple goals tonight, so I'm going to make sure I can operate this right. I will do it this way. So just a brief, quick update on council chamber technology, since we are, you just heard a little echo when Scott moved the microphone. I want to give you this update. Steve and Jonathan in IT and I have met with the vendors and are pursuing some further upgrades, including to audio, and really to assess this room as a multi-purpose room outside of just the council meeting usage as well. This is one of our large rooms for staff meetings and such. If we need to rearrange this room, the presence of any fixed dais tends to bring all the focus this way, right? But there's a whole room out here that sits empty most days of the week and most times of the week that can be used in other purposes. So we're adding to that solicitation some key points, including to address some of this microphone issue you hear. Part of that is because we intended microphones to be here, but if you see all the speakers, they're there. If we move a microphone just out into the chairs, you're going to get an incredible feedback loop. So we are working on really assessing this, and then the conference room as overflow and the interoperability between the two. So that one person, whether it be the clerks, public affairs, whoever, we can walk in with one iPad and run the room, run the meeting in terms of camera inputs and outputs, where the cameras are looking, microphones on and such. So that's an update. We'll have more to come on that. We're obviously in the proposal stage and get a project plan put together and such for you. Tonight, we also want to look at I'm not going to go through each of these as just in depth as I just did. We'll look at the SIP and make sure we are on the right path as staff, as you have talked about in your conversation last week. We heard the conversation and need some more information on payouts. Also our personnel cost and what is happening with personnel cost. And we look at that versus our authorized FTE. Salary increases, if we were to do them, what are those estimates? The steps, the vaunted steps, what do we mean by steps? How do they work? How do they operate? Some education for you. And then we're going to close up with some direction on budget items, because obviously we need to publish the ordinances and prepare this Friday for our June 1 budget hearing. So this is not just a quick conversation, but a real in-depth. So I'm going to go into capital improvements. Am I pressing the wrong button here? I have to, it's fine. Well, it's fine. It works. So security enhancements, we did hear very clearly the conversation about security and recommend accelerating what was the FY23 plans in your book for the building security and security cameras. So this is the key card doors and also the cameras on the outside. This is in the police budget, the part of their SIP, increasing that funding this year by $155K out of the fund balance to accelerate those projects. And then also putting in a proposal here that we need to look at further recommendations on physical security enhancements. Let's put together a project team, look at our public spaces and provide a report, funding potentials and recommendations in the first quarter of the new fiscal year so that the police chief and our teams can all work together on these necessities. Quick case in point, the municipal court clerk's window is bulletproof. But you can reach right across our customer support desk, 6 feet away. So that is a security enhancement that we want to take seriously. Again, if we have heard wrong on the direction and what to change for the budget, speak now, please, and so that we can make sure to adjust things. So,
Eric, if we move on to
Yep.
that, explain, when you say utilize fund balance, you're telling me that
yes.
funds are already there.
Right, so there is a fund balance in the capital improvement sales tax expenditure of, I will find the number for you, meaning that it's essentially savings that we did not put in this budget. And that number, we would use that some of those savings of 155K, instead of putting it in 23, we'll do it now in 22. So we'll accelerate it, take it from savings. So it increases the overall budget, uses a little of the savings to do so. So it doesn't affect anything else in the budget. We're using the savings account to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Parks and recreation improvements. So I'm going to first talk about the planned fitness studio at the rec center. We plan to keep in what is in your document, so there's no change. Are we correct on that? That is the first bullet there, to make no change to the fitness studio addition to the rec center. Included in our what we hear is that the new park addition is an addition that the board would like, the council would like to pursue, but we have reduced the benchmark of money for the possible purchase from GRG from 250K in the park improvement fund to 50K in what is the budget. So this is a placeholder number. We've moved that down to 50. That gives us 200 in this year, not in the savings account, but what's in the budget already. And that moves in partly into Ivory Crockett improvements and the acceleration of the plans there. We talked about community engagement last week. This would accelerate all the Ivory Crockett improvements to this year. That's a total of 305K in park improvement funding, along with 15 of the CDBG, as was proposed in the budget. We would utilize, to get all of that in, 95 more out of the park improvement fund, that savings account, that fund balance, to fully do that, what was in the book. And then also we add in the fact that we do need to have community engagement. What is the appropriate replacement? Do we do tennis? Do we do basketball? What are we doing in that park? And engage with the community so that the council then can receive a report and recommendations. We are proposing in Q2, quarter 2 of this fiscal year, so this fall, winter, so that we can make policy recommendations to you. Decisions can be made and we can affect them into calendar year 23 for that summer season.
Where does that leave us with the park improvement fund then?
The park improvement fund before these changes is at $886,000 in fund balance. So that would pull it to just under about 790,000.
So you're talking about putting $305,000 into Ivory Crockett in 1 year?
Yes. And that's for the council, what we heard, but that is why we're here tonight.
So in terms of what that would cover,
Mhm.
obviously there's some planning to still happen, but we know that that's the trail, the basketball court, and then does that mean the playground's been moved up as well?
That's everything in the book that was there across those 5
however many
years,
years.
moved up.
So the shelters and everything.
Shelters, and walking path.
So this was meant to be discussion for your recommendations on how we move forward with this, because we did hear that Ivory Crockett in terms of moving up. And then in terms of the new park, I did receive emails from a couple of you. Everybody, it seems like, is on board with moving forward with new park, but perhaps spending less on the feature or bookmarking the feature that would be there, whether it's the WG or the slides or whatever, that those would be purchased in future years. But these are all council decisions. We just needed the direction and where to go.
And if I can just add one quick point to that, just a reminder that while we put some numbers in, we can always come and do a budget amendment. We're not limited by this process, but we do need to have direction so we can publish our budget process for the approving of that in June. And then we can always come back and pull down further balance or make other decisions about spending if we want to add to that.
Over the past 5 years, how much money have we spent in Ivory Crockett Park compared to our other park? Is it significantly less, or is it about the same, or is there a discrepancy anywhere?
I'm going to ask Scott to speak to that. I know you brought all of those numbers with you last time. I don't know if you have them, but if you could share what you remember, it would be terrific.
I apologize. I don't have all those numbers with me again this evening. Over the last 5 years, there has not been a significant dollar amount spent in Ivory Crockett Park. Let's say over the last 3 or 4 years since we weren't since we weren't able to put any CDBG funding in there. That started in 2015 through 2018. We weren't allowed to use CDBG funding. And then since 2018, we've chosen to use that funding for the home improvement. So yes, since 2015, there hasn't been any big ticket CDB funding in there. That's not out of the ordinary. We have 20 parks. We can't do significant upgrades to each park every 20 years. So they kind of rotate around. So that's a kind of two-part question. Hope I answered.
So when was the last time that we made a significant upgrade to Ivory Crockett?
From 2002 to 2015, we were putting yearly funds in there through CDBG, and then also in the mid 2000s, we did significant improvements out of the park improvement fund with ball field renovations, new backstops, some things of that nature in there. So it is coming due. Typically we got 20 parks. We kind of do one-ish a year. So we're running into that, close to that 20-year mark. Some significant major improvements all in 1 year have been done. But Ivory Crockett has had incremental changes to it, improvements to it throughout the years.
Is there grant money available? Like, I mean, by us pushing it up, are we losing out on potential grant money?
I don't have any grant funding tied to this through the Municipal Park Grant Commission, which is our largest grant funding source. That this year or next year would be for the new fitness center, that $475,000 for the mini park for that. And then typically every other year we can get that $475,000. The next round I have tied into the new pool program.
I'll speak for myself. I think this is a lot to do in 1 year period. I would, given the budget constraints that we have this year, I would think that maybe, I mean, we talked about the basketball courts really are in bad shape. They need to be done. The trail needs to be done. I would think if we can put some of this off into the following year, it would be agreeable to me.
Mayor, using funds that we already have in the park improvement fund, how is that impact? It's almost like a net.
Well, then what it does is your funds are gone for next year. I mean, if you're gonna, it's like your savings account. If you spend it all this year, then you don't have it next year. And it's just a matter of
After this
finding it out.
improvement, we're gonna have, what was it, Scott? 700, 800,000?
We'll have 796,000
left in this fund. And I think that fund has been rolling a balance of how much for the last 5 years?
So, and to answer that question, council member, the fund balance at the beginning of this year, of this fiscal year we're in, was at 1.1 million. So we are at 886,000 with the COVID revenues affected, and then also whatever spending decisions were in this current budget was at 886. So that will, if we do it in this model, we'd use 95 of that fund balance.
Are we not also taking out all of the funding for Scott's salary as well as?
That's already included in that 886 number. That is the balance with the budget as you see it in the book, not including that change I just told you about, is 886 left in the savings account.
After we pay
After
for
we pay for
everybody's
all.
salary?
Yep.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that we're not rushing the public engagement part of this by trying to do this all before the winter. And so, I mean, I would object to spreading that out a little bit, even if it means going into the next year, to make sure that we really do a process where people feel like they have a voice in what that park looks like. And so I'm less worried about this year versus next year in terms of the money. I'm more concerned that we really have a thorough process through which people are engaged. And we know from a couple of recent things that people feel like we're not necessarily reaching them in ways that they want to have a meaningful impact. So my 2 cents there.
Well, I do agree with you, Laura. I mean, it's best to see what the community has to say, what they would like to see versus us giving them what we think they might want. So I agree with that. If we can make sure we have a very robust community engagement to understand what they are looking for in their community, that would be best. Even if we have to put something off until next year to get done, I think we do need to hear them first. How long does it take to do a community engagement? Maybe 30 days. We can start on that right away. I mean, that's nothing but to wait for the summer or the winter or the fall to do. But
Theoretically, we could start on it right away, but we do have a lot of other things going on.
not the engagement.
Well, I frankly would like our new community engagement specialist to outline a process for us so that we really understand what that looks like.
Yes, I agree.
She's been on the job for 2 weeks.
She's done a lot.
I know, that's what I'm saying. She has a lot to, I'm just saying, like, I think that Laura's making a really valid point here that if we're gonna go to the community and get their input, let's get their input and not rush anything.
Well, even if you do a 6-month process, that's a long time. And by the time you go through that, get it documented, go on to the next phase.
Yeah.
It's going to be a year-long process anyway for the
Year-long
one-
process just to get even proposals.
Just the one, right,
Yeah,
and get the feedback on it
Yeah.
and everything. So I think, starting on it this year is pertinent.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I
And
guess the
it's not
question is,
it's not gonna be something that, it is not gonna be a flash in the pan decision. We can do like the maintenance that needs to be done and the upgrades, but then the community engagement part, it's not for the maintenance and bringing things up to a good standard. It's for the additional, what to do with the amenity that is not being used right now.
but I guess the question is, do we need to allocate this year 305? If we know, I think it sounds like we're all in agreement that this community engagement and the process is gonna take longer than a fiscal year. So the question is, do we need to allocate 305 this year?
Well, I can say it can be longer than the fiscal year. I just don't want to rush to getting the community engagement done. So that we can put some type of schedule to it, and then we can determine how much could be done. If you say, I'm only going to do 300 or 200,000 this year, we'll do the next year. What have you gained?
What have you lost?
I'm just saying, community engagement, and once we found out what our roadmap is, then we start working the roadmap.
So you just want to put a number out there and say, oh, we might use that amount
To just
without any community engagement or any community input to
No,
determine?
you're skipping over community engagement. We're not saying don't do the community engagement. We want the community engagement. But even if we put out the 305 out there as a placeholder, then we have something to continue to move on.
When
The
some of that,
305 is just a placeholder.
some of that's not hypothetical, right? Because we
Right.
know how much, we know how much is budgeted to do the walking trails and the upkeep that's overdue, right? And that would be something that could be moved on before there's.
Right. And I think, the walking trail needs upgraded now, and it needs to be repaired. And I think Todd mentioned that there's something almost be done in-house. So those things we can move on. But with the recommendation of getting rid of the tennis court, because it's not being used, that's what we want to hear from the community. What would you like to be done with that space? The basketball court, that can be repaired. I mean, it's a basketball court, so we know what to do with that. So we move on with that. So you got the walking trail, you got the basketball court. Now replacing the
Pavilions.
pavilions, well, yeah, maybe that might have a little something different for it. Electricity, water, who knows? But I think we can move on with the major part of the upgrade with,
Well, I agree, but that's what I'm asking is, do we need to allocate 305?
we don't know what it is. How much does it cost?
Well, I can- I can give you-
Isn't this a
Well,
discussion that we
time.
really don't need to have because we can amend the budget?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
So.
We can
Exactly.
amend the budget and, sorry, Ms. Peterson. And so the discussion really is helpful because it lets us know where council is at. So we can fix the number in terms of the walking trail, the basketball recommendations. Jenny is already working on that communication plan, community engagement plan. So we'll have some information to update on that.
Right.
And I don't have my budget book in front of me, so I don't know if you can tell me what that number would be with the
Yeah,
basketball.
so I can,
trail.
I may turn to Scott here. So the walking trail was the farthest out. If you look at page 346 in my book, it might be the same for yours. The walking trail was in FY 26 at $75,000.
Yeah.
And then the difference in this year, the FY 22 current number of 50,000 is to to mill and overlay the basketball courts and eliminate the tennis court.
Right.
So if we leave the current tennis court in place, that 50,000 would be somewhat less. So my best guesstimate, I'll just, to make us safe, take 75 plus 40K in this year, with those functions. I'm looking back at Scott to make sure I'm not underfunding him, but we can always come back and talk to the council. If
For year ending 24, there was 160,000. Was that for?
That's playground. and-
24 is for the pavilions.
So I think let's wind this up because I think what we're hearing is that we ought to put in this budget enough to do the basketball court, the walking trail, do some community engagement, come back the next year and figure out what we're going to do with playgrounds and pavilions and everything else. How does that sound?
But I think to Emerson's point, it does leave room that if we
Laura.
get, it is on. I turned it, yeah, the light's on, I promise. Do you want me to really yell loudly? I'll use my coaching voice. If the community engagement wraps up sooner and we know what we need to do, then we can come back and amend the budget and move forward.
Exactly. Amen. Let's move on.
Can I ask a question about the new park?
Yes.
Just, do we know that's enough to kind of get that property started?
We haven't even started that program yet, so whatever
Sorry.
we haven't started designing that park yet with Great Rivers Greenway. So we're not tied to any dollar amount yet. The number that was in the original document was a placeholder from where we might go. So we can start those development design ideas with GRG and we'll see how much, I don't know how much money they have to throw into it. I don't know how much money they'll be able to raise in donations. So
So basically just lowering a hypothetical number.
Yes.
it probably won't be as grand a design as the ones that I showed you last week.
And
Yeah, it's increased time.
for those of us who've been around with GRG, we know this will be a while, don't we, Scott?
2 years, bro.
2 years, how many years did it take for us to do the Lorraine Davis piece? 8? So,
A
yeah,
little smaller than that.
yeah,
So if council's amenable, that original number was 250 in the new park edition. We can just move that down, the amount we are moving into Ivory Crockett this year, and then not change that number drastically from 250 to 50. That is an appropriation power that you are giving to the department and to staff to move forward. Obviously, these will need a whole bunch of design approvals and conditional approvals from you all. So it's not a true power, but I just want to make sure you're aware of what that change would be in terms of what you do. So.
all right, let's move on. We got a lot of other things here.
All right, so we have lots of salary questions and updates to bring you from our conversation last week. We'll start with payouts. You had questions about payouts. I'm going to give you the number here as soon as I find it, and I don't have it with me. It's I'll get to it. I know what it is. This is FY19. We had 5 retirements and 12 separations. You'll see in bulk, over 4,600 hours of work were paid out when people retired or separated from the city at a cost of 156,000 and some change in FY19. I'll point out here in the retirements, you have payouts of 3,600. So, 1,000 less than the total for vacation, comp, and sick. We have 83,000 in total sick time payout in FY19. The average payout to retiree of that time was $16,800. Vacation time, $47,000 payout, average payout $9,400. Comp time, you had $2,700 paid out. Again, two persons, so the average was half. I can tell you right now that it was not a nice even split like that. We'll provide numbers in closed sessions that would indicate which employees and which members of the team so that you're aware of the conditions around them. So this is our conversations about our policies about payouts. So this is background information.
It looks like sick is up there twice. I'm not sure I understand why it's part of the,
So this is the total hours for retirees paid.
oh,
out
those, that's
of
not the
vacation,
dollar
comp,
amount,
and
that's the
sick.
number of hours.
Exactly.
Okay,
Sorry.
I just need to stick with it.
Yep, sorry, that's my fault, I'll tell you. So that was the hours paid out. Here is the dollars paid out in
Right.
sick time, vacation time, and comp time, and then averaged by those who had it.
This money.
And of the separations, people that left us but didn't retire, 1,000 hours were paid out. And again, we'll have full numbers for you all in closed session. FY20, much less, 2 retirements, 13 separations, same calculations, 2,600 hours, $78,000 paid out. Again, you can see the breakdowns there. This is in your chart. There is 1 sick time payout not included in this that we need to discuss in closed due to the fact that revelation of the details behind it would identify that employee. So we'll discuss that in closed session. FY21, we had 6 retirements, 12 separations. You can see a drastic increase, $217,000 paid out. In the fiscal year we are in right now. We don't anticipate any more this year. It may come. But we obviously are paying out lots of hours for vacation, comp, and sick. You can see an increase there. 12 separations, very similar to our 2 years ago. Hours are up by 700 plus hours. So I want to take those payouts, those numbers. That number, by the way, for those 3 years is about 400, and I don't have the document with me, Dr. Peoples. I think it's 435 or maybe even more.
$423,883.
So in 3 years, we paid out $423,000 in payouts in the last 3 years, which again, we will discuss, the specifics of those payouts in the closed session. This is our personnel cost growth, just the general fund. So take out park improvement fund, road taxes, all that. This is just the general fund that you have the ultimate discretion over. And you see FY18 actuals, 19 actuals, 20 actuals, the estimate for this year in 21, and the budget that is proposed for 22. You will see by function, so general government function, police, fire, public works, parks and recreation, planning and development. There's again the actuals. There's your change from the year before. So using general government, FY18 to 19, we added $61,000 of personnel cost. Okay, that's for all these functions across. You will see here in FY20 some big reductions. Why is that? It's the onset of the pandemic. We started to remove staff. We obviously in parks and recreation, things shut down, hours change. We have some revenue reductions, also some moves possibly into other funds of funding sources. But this is general fund again. And as you can see, we're not far down here in FY21, right? We're back up. We're right back to where almost we were in many regards. So you can see here's, police is obviously an increase. That's about it. Let's go to parks and rec. We went down in 20 and now look at our budget. Our 21 estimate is close to 19, obviously up for 22. Overall, this is a yearly change, and I gave you a chart here that showed these yearly changes. We have added since FY18 to FY22, 5 fiscal years, $1.9 million of personnel cost. $1.9 million of personnel cost. We have only added, and these two numbers right here are different than is what I distributed. We just had a miscalculation of the year, but they're right on this PowerPoint that you're seeing. We have only added 3.25 FTE in that time.
700,000 comes from fire.
Yeah, so if you look here, 3.8, to 4.6, yes. You have another police here, you have a good about $700,000 increase.
And
Much of this will be conversation we deal with in steps as well, but sorry, council member.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so we've only added the FTE for 18, 19, and 20 was
Stagnant,
stagnant.
yes.
But
So-
in the pandemic year, it went up.
Yes, so this is the addition of the public affairs role. There was a planning tech, and then the customer support went from a 0.5 to a 3.0, so a 1.0. So we took a halftime, made them full-time to make a supervisor down in customer support. And then you have the new, is it built permit tech or a built planning? I'm not sure what the title is, but in this budget, the one extra position is in planning and development.
And all,
But
all
either-
those happened at the first part of the year.
Exactly. So either way, we're looking at, you have $1.9 million of personnel cost growth in the general fund, but only 3.25 FTE. That does not account for the whole personnel cost. Certainly, we all can see that. What I wanted to point out is that these payouts, if you look at 19, 20, and 21, these 3 years, that growth there is actually the largest piece of our growth. It's 1.572 million in these 3 years. So our payouts in retirements in those years are 27% of that personnel growth in both the current fiscal year, the previous fiscal year, and the coming fiscal, and excuse me, and then the 19, the second previous. So I showed you this one right here, 19, 20, 21.
So is there a recommendation on how to stem this tide?
We will,
Several.
last slide, we're gonna get there.
We
So,
do.
yeah.
And this is also, I mean, there are recommendations around this in terms of how we do our personnel policies, which will be tonight's discussion as well as upcoming discussions. But it's also about planning for the future in terms of what I'd shared with you a couple sessions ago, that 25% of our employees we know have over 20 years of service. This is a trend that's going to continue, and it has not been planned for in terms of how we manage this. So there's a lot of conversations that go around that.
I would also add in this point to the page I handed out to you, our revenue growth over that same period of the $1.9 million cost increase has only grown 547,000. So our drivers, our decisions, for whatever reason, are far outpacing what the general fund can sustain, which is a realization we all know, just reaffirmed with some numbers as we delve into those numbers for you. So looking ahead for the budget in 22, what are the estimates for all in the various things that we have historically and normally done? First of all, the 2% COLA for all employees, full and part-time, which includes the ERE. This is not just their salary, but this is their benefit package, which would be affected as well. That number is $293,765.24 to give people the cost of living increase that we have normally and historically done. We also have historically added a performance pay of 1.5. We call it the 1.5. First of all, not everyone gets 1.5. That's about the average number. Some people get more, some people get less. It is not equally applied. It is a pay for performance model. All in, that's $120,738.50. That is our estimate, including the ERE. For some folks who are at the at the top of their range, the maximum, this is where their calculation is different than most employees because they actually get a 27th paycheck that gives them one lump sum of whatever their pay for performance addition, their payout is. So they are.
Will you say that again?
Sure.
You lost me there.
Not a problem. So the pay for performance is applied as of January 1, not on the fiscal year. So we have to figure half of the year's cost for FY22. We don't even know what people will get, right? So we're figuring half a year. But if you're at the max of your range, a fire captain who's at the max of the range, your 1.5% performance pay or whatever the aggregate number is you're going to get, the whole number is paid in one paycheck, which is called the 27th pay period. Some employees never receive that. It's built into their base and moves their base up. But if you're at the max, you can't go any higher in your base. So we just give you an extra paycheck. This is an area, as we talk about policy, that I would recommend changing the date and the application of this if we are going to continue this, because it makes it incredibly difficult to actually get a true and accurate cost estimate of this performance pay. There's also issues with how we do it, and there are potentially better models if we are going to continue that operation. We'll get to that in direction. Police and fire steps. These are the big questions that folks had. They began in 20 for fire. Police began in 21. 26 is not the right number. We actually found 2 more that are at the max. 28 of 72 personnel are at the max step of the range, 16 in police, 12 in fire. 12 in fire. And I'll explain why we're having trouble calculating some of that in just a second. This is important again, because that means 28 people on the steps alone, just in police and fire, get that extra paycheck. There may be other employees, but that's why the max is important. We also just need to have some discussions and really direction to staff. We need some HR process improvements. We cannot go into the ERP, which is an enterprise resource program, and identify Eric Peterson, the firefighter, is in step 1. We literally have to look at his salary, go back, find when the steps start, see which salary they're in, and their length of tenure. There's not just a way to sort and find all the firefighters in step 3, all the police officers in step 7. So that is a process we need to do. They may be marked in paper files. That is not easy or a good business process to sort through paper files to try to find everyone in a certain step. So we need to make improvements in that record keeping part of the system. Into steps. Here are the current fire steps. Fire steps, literally, you have always seen the salary ranges, the maximum and minimums. That is what you have approved for FY21 is step 0, which is the minimum. Step 8 is the maximum. And so we literally, best I can understand it, in conversations with Marlene and members of the team, is we took that minimum to the maximum, divided it by 8 steps. Each division point, right? That is, a step. So if you're in step 0, which means you're in your first year with us, not at a full year, you start in a firefighter in that number, that's your salary number. And then you are, there's 3 of them we have identified in that step. This asterisk here, I want to make sure is important. Again, we can't just find the number within a step. We have to try to calculate it. This is why the emailed version of the PowerPoint's a little different than this. We came through the captain's, tenure logs and when they were made captains and realized we had people in the wrong steps in the PowerPoint. So we made some changes. These are our best after a weekend of going through each individual staff's tenure and salaries to tell you which step they are in currently in this year. I'll also tell you, other than the maximum, and we'll discuss this in closed session about some of the issues, other than this, people in this range right here or in this maximum, not anyone has a salary that is actually what is listed right here on the steps. Their salaries are all different. And it's a calculation issue to deal with the pay for performance. And we know it's going to happen when you take that 1.5 pay for performance, the way the steps have worked. So in July of this past year, when the step went from 20 to 21, we put the 2% on. So the whole range moves. And then if I'm a 1-year firefighter in FY20, and now I'm a step 2, so I get my 2% and I get moved up a step. And then we add the pay for performance on top, and that moves your base up. So we have people that fight the police, and you'll see this the difference here. The police have not yet had that happen because they haven't had a full next step, right? They've only had 1 step. We here have 2 steps, so people are now, if you're at this step 5, the actual salary is above that number because of pay for performance and some other issues that we do need to discuss. I will, go ahead.
So just make sure that folks who've never been in a step process
Right.
understand how this works.
So a step process is if you are not in a unfavorable evaluation, if you are a good conduct employee, favorably evaluated, a step process is meant to give you a surety of steps through a range. Through the CBA, there is discussion of the steps, not really outlined well, but there is discussion of steps and certainly what looks like some piece of evidence of intent to have 8 steps to move from the minimum to the maximum. So some guarantee of pay. The difference and so what happens if you are in FY, and I'll give you some, in fact, why don't I do it right now? If you are a firefighter in this step right here, 61,360, in FY22, you're going to get $3,906 of a raise come July. Okay, because you're not only going to get the 2% of the move of the whole range, I'm not sure where my mouse went, there it is, but you're going to go from step 0 to step 1, right? So you're going to get the interval between the steps added on top of the 2% as it moves. If you are a regular employee, not on the step program, at this 61,360, you are only getting $1,227 when we apply a 2% COLA increase.
Can you talk a little bit about this page that we have?
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
So,
sorry, if I'm going ahead.
nope, you're fine. So it's fine. We might as well go to this.
So the change in fire department ranges from FY 19 to 20, so the minimum.
Yep.
So just a typical firefighter went from 54 in FY 19 to 60.
So this is the implementation of steps. So FY 19 is not with steps. Okay. FY 20 is the first year of the steps. So this document was meant to show you to give you that, what ranges were changed. There's some big numbers and I'll explain some of them. FY 19, a firefighter was at 54,630. The step program began at 61,57. So they grew $5,500. The step, the basis of that range was not a 2%. There was a number selected in the CBA. And then we built the steps off of that. Fire captains, went from 61 in 19 to an $82,000 minimum. I'm going to get to the real effect of that in just a second. Battalion chiefs made up. Go ahead.
So I was just going to ask, so in other words, we just went, the fire department or the fire department just went through the largest increase we'll see. And the police department is now going to go through that.
The fire department went through the largest increase 2 years ago. The police department went through that last year.
Okay.
Into the steps.
So in regards to the step program, it's going to be the effect is going to be a little bit more minimal going forward than it has over the past 2 years.
Let me back up for a second. We've gone through the largest step on paper.
Okay.
Some of these folks, so this is where you may absolutely be right, council member, but fire captain's a great example. Many of the fire captains in the old range in 19, if you see the maximum was 85, we're close to the 85 number. So the actual effect of the range change may not have been great. On paper, it looks big, but it may not have been great. However, it does give them more room that other employees have not had a massive range change. And that's a piece of the compensation and classification study that we need to go through. So there are cases in here where we're going to see people also jump into the steps, not at 0. So it depends on your tenure. So we have, again, fire captain. How do we have 2 fire captains that are maxed out already? Well, they've been captains for well over 4 years. So they went into the step and went right to the top end of what the step is, for those 4 years for captains.
So just so I can recount what you just said to make it clear in my own head.
Yep.
So an assistant fire chief in FY 19, the minimum that he or she could have been making was $74,929.
Correct.
But they could have been making more than that, such that when they went to FY 20, their increase might have only gone from 100,000 to 106,000.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. If you look to the red columns, that's the maximums for those years.
Okay.
So the example you just gave, assistant fire chief minimum was 74,929. The maximum in 19 was 104,901. If a person was at the maximum, we essentially reset the range and now they got $1,100 raise.
Gotcha.
But on paper, it looks big. So I wanted to explain these ranges. And this is the difficulty of the STEP program and figuring out where people are at, is that it's not easily identifiable within our system. And we cannot just simply press a couple buttons and whip out here's what it's going to cost you all. The steps as they exist. We're going to go on to police real quick as we move on, because I know we have time limitations. These are the police steps. This is the first year. So they have not been adjusted. And I just want to point out that police steps have started lower at 58,158, since this is the first year, versus the first year, of fire, which was lower at about 60,000. So they've already started out lower. And last year's decision was to put them in at 9 steps. So it takes 9 years to go to the maximum. But as you can see, 12 police officers did step into the maximum within their range because of their tenure. These are the captains lined up. I can tell you now, I can pull a salary report and everyone's salary lines exactly up. So this goes back to an issue that we need to address about what happened to performance pay. Why is it working one way in the fire and why is it not working another way in the police department? So these are precise though, that we know people's salaries and we know where they're at. So this is 22 and this I'll go to again and show you. So this is a 2% applied. And I'm going to say it's maybe mandatory due to the CBA. We need to have conversation in closed session about that. But if 2% is all we apply, which is the COLA, that will move the range so that the bottom pay is 62,587. And that will move, everyone moves up 2% across these steps because the range moves 2%. And this is the gain, just that 2% would be, right? So if all we did was 2%, that would be the gain. But again, if you have an employee who's in step 1 here in 21 and goes to step 0, in 21 and goes to step 1 here, their actual gain is 3906. Why? They get the 2% and the interval between the two. So I'll give you another one. A step 5 employee in 21 who goes to this number now is not going to make $14.90. They're going to see an increase of $4,168 versus an employee at the same amount is going to see that number right there, the 2%. So I'm pointing that out just to simply show the difference across the organization as we make salary decisions on what may be felt by employees. This is fire, we go to police. This is our first, again, this is totally disregarding performance pay, straight salary plus the 2% COLA. These are the new ranges. Here are the intervals of between those steps for both police and sergeants. Does this make sense, what I have just explained? I also want to say that the police officers, and I'll give you an example here at step 0, in 21 goes to step 2 and 22 makes 3,388. That is their total increase. An employee at that 58,000, the base that was in 21 would make about $1,163. But even here, because of the length between the steps, the ranges, the 9 steps, police officers do not see the kind of pay that a firefighter would see in terms of their gain across the step system because the steps are constructed different. I'm willing to pause because I know it took me a whole weekend to grab around this and we do have many issues to discuss about steps in closed session about some issues that have risen. So I'll put this up because this is really our conversation point. We are recommending, we have budget problem of intense amounts. We have payouts that we may not be able to change right away, but we have some recommendations for you from Dr. Peoples and myself. First of all, we recommend that both the 2% and the 1.5 performance pay be foregone for this year. We are seeing the effect of the pandemic and our own structural issues with personnel costs. That is not an easy decision to arrive by, and a recommendation on our part. It affects all of us in this room, but that is our recommendation. We do believe if we're going to do performance pay, there needs to be a process revision in that. And again, I will go to that timeline conversation as well off of the calendar year and aligning with the fiscal year. We also need to discuss in closed session later tonight the mandatory nature of the fire steps and also our conversation about equity between our public service agencies. And we need to audit past year's applications on the steps. And then regarding leave and accruals, we do recommend a full review of potential policy changes. That is a piece of the compensation and classification study, but it also takes in what are our counterparts doing right in this neighborhood as we look at retention and recruitment. But there are, and this part I will easily say, I have never worked in a place where comp and sick are paid out if you separate. I've never worked in a place where comp is paid out anytime. Sick leave, many governments have gone to conversion if you retire. Conversion meaning you don't get paid out for your sick leave, but it's converted into a premium to pay for your healthcare benefit to continue post-employment. But those payouts, and you will see the numbers directly associated in closed session. Again, we'll protect confidentiality, but those numbers are large that we are paying out in payouts. In 3 years, almost $500,000, which is 27% of our general fund personnel cost.
And there was no accruals.
Though they do accrue. So we are.
I mean, for what's financial, there was no accruals of that dollar amount. Knowing that X staff member had X amount of dollars of vacation they didn't take out.
Correct. We estimate, and I'm sorry, I don't have the number off the top of my head. Marlene has it and I can get it to the council. We have an estimate for 3 retirements we are anticipating in 22. We may have more. We may have more yet in this fiscal year. Also, the separations, we part ways with somebody out of a necessary need. There's a check that they get for 3 things that we're paying out on. One of which, and Neil can correct me if I'm wrong, only one of which an employee has a vested property right to, and that is vacation time. That is a property right that an employee has. We need to respect that, but there are all elements of our policy that are incredibly generous that we need to address with, are we in line with what our neighboring governments do with it for retention and recruitment, but also for our own fiscal sustainability.
So our numbers for compensation has never rang true.
What's that?
I mean, our compensation numbers for each year has not been true. I mean, because if I accrue 20 hours of vacation, that was not accrued as a potential expense or a current expense. It was just whenever it
came due, we added it in. So this is where.
That it was not budgeted for.
Correct. When we go all the way back to the beginning of the, I should have learned to run a PowerPoint here. We go back to this one here. So this is why we gave you actuals, right? The budget number for FY20 was not 1.396 for general government. It was much different than that, right? I mean, this is the problems of the estimates. We're in a fiscal year while we're trying to do a budget. So I can't even tell you what this year will be. We're making our best estimate. And a budget is ultimately a moral document reflecting our policy priority, but this is why we come and do budget amendments and updates on the budget progress, so we can update you about the changes and the variances between the actuals, our estimates, and what is coming due for the budget. So that
we didn't register these as liabilities is what.
Yeah, exactly. They're not registered in unless we know about it. And this is, we don't require employees to say, ahead of the fiscal year, please tell us if you're going to retire. So if someone is good enough to do so, we can then start to book that in and add those personnel costs so that you can see them in the budget. But it is not a, maybe you get 1 or 2 a year, maybe. So
I think I have an understanding of comp time, but someone who's extremely far removed from comp time. Can you explain that to me?
Certainly, we offer employees the opportunity, if they work over 40 hours a week, to take, instead of overtime pay, compensatory time at time and a half, which means it's not vacation. It's a record of, if I work 50 hours a week, okay, I have now 10 plus another half. So that's 15 hours of comp time. We allow this to salaried employees, might I add, so not just hourly, salaried employees as well, that they can keep on the record, and that they have to, theoretically under our policy, they should spend it as soon as possible, I think are the words we use in the personnel document, but many don't. They hang on to it. They get paid out for that comp time. Comp time, again, is not, we can offer comp time. I think there's probably some value in it, just for my recommendation, but it is not a property right, not something we have to keep on the books. We can limit it. We can say it has to be used in a certain time. And that really would drive down a piece of our liability. When we are enclosed, I can break out the comp overall, well, those last 3 years versus our vacation and sick. I would add that our sick is really a major driver, though. I mean, our sick leave costs are large. We also give sick and vacation to part-time employees. And there's a real question there. Part-time employees, are we giving sick and vacation time to part-time employees? That is a policy conversation for you all. We'll need direction on how to create a policy and what to look at in that regard. Don't necessarily need it tonight, but we will need that going forward. What is up that we will need to do with the budget tonight for expenditures and understanding is at least these 2 things. And then we need to convene to close later tonight to discuss the step issues. But we do need to decide what we will do on the 2% COLA and the 1.5 performance pay, because that does affect the bottom line number of the budget.
On that, And thank you, Eric, for going through all the numbers and sharing that. You know, that is not an easy recommendation to make. And it's one that will hit employees hard because the COLA is something that has been historically given. I could not find a year where it has not been given. And employees often deserve it. And we know healthcare costs are going up as well, 4.5% this year. And so what I wanted to share about that is that from looking back, and I certainly wasn't part of the organization then, but you kept everybody whole during the pandemic. There were not layoffs, there were not RIFs, there weren't reductions in hours. And that says a lot about the value to employees. So I do not want employees or even you, council, to hear my recommendation of not valuing employees by not giving the COLA or the 1.5% performance. Part of that is knowing that we're doing the classification and compensation study and that we will have corrections to make, whether it's in steps or with tenure, gender, you know, there's a multitude of things. I can share with you that I know we have many employees that are not in equitable areas. And so all you're hearing about tonight is, you know, how much our personnel costs have went up, but we can attribute those to just a couple of things, whether it's retirements, payouts, or within our uniform services. So we will have corrections to make. And so what I would say is, you know, if council entertains not doing the 2% or the 1.5 or both, that we do say that a portion of that, if we're able to, in terms of our finances, that once we have the results of the classification and compensation study, that we would then make adjustments. I do think it might be a little short-sighted to give either options, one or two right now, knowing that there are going to be adjustments to make as well. So I would just share that. And so perhaps it's a pause on the 2%, 1.5, but we'll certainly, this is a council decision and really look forward to your thoughts.
Is it a direct impact to the bottom line of the budget?
Yes, sir.
Emerson, I didn't hear what you said.
It was a direct impact on the bottom line of the budget.
Can you remind us when each are awarded typically?
Certainly. So the COLA is awarded in the fiscal year. So that is July 1. It's when it's historically been applied to that pay period beginning July 1 or anytime thereafter, but in July 1. 1.5% performance pay is applied on January 1. So we go through the fall, do that process, and then the amounts are applied. Again, a reminder, it is not 1.5 to each employee. That is an average. Some employees get less, some employees get more. The departments have a pool of money to essentially allocate across their departments. And I do believe there are process improvements within that process that we really should look at. Even if it stays on January 1, the process of how we arrive at those decisions needs to be looked at.
Unfortunately, I think we delayed making changes in the course of the pandemic last year. And as a result, I think those changes are coming to us today. I think our number one duty and responsibility as council members is to ensure that the fiscal management of this city is in good stead. And as a result, as much as I don't like to do it, I think as of right now, I think we have very little option but to go ahead and implement these recommendations, number one and number two, for this current fiscal year.
I don't share that opinion. I just looked up the CPI for last year, which was 1.4%. And I think, given all of the issues that are coming up now, if we look at changes in the accumulation of sick leave pay, et cetera, I think that will be a hit on our staff. And I think a little something, we could skip the performance pay, but I think some sort of increase, even if it's small, I think is really important for the morale of the staff. And that 2% comes up to $293,000. In the scheme of things, that's less than we were going to spend on Ivory Crockett Park.
Mayor, the difference in that is that this would be a direct impact to the bottom line of the budget.
So yes, I understand that.
I mean, Ivory Crockett money is already there.
But the morale issue here, Emerson.
Talk about
the
morale, that's
issue
fine. You
is-
can talk about morale, but don't compare it to Ivory Crockett Park. It's different.
It's an amount.
Yeah, I don't think she was saying that it's coming from the same fund, I think that's unfair.
Oh, no, it's not unfair. I think she said, she meant what she said.
That was pretty clear.
To you, but not to me.
So I find this incredibly difficult, obviously. I think we all do, because I do believe that every one of us sitting here values the employees that we have, and we appreciate the work they've done in the last year. But part of the problem is, as we went into last year, we said, okay, we're going to do the 2%. We're going to look at the 1.5%, and then we just let it all go. And we did it all. And we don't have the capacity to do that again. And, you know, we did that for morale. And if we keep increasing for morale, I don't think we're ever going to get out of the cycle that we're in. And that's why I think this is really, really hard. But I do understand, and I do recognize, Mayor, that part of what you're saying is, look, you know, our employees have a healthcare increase coming, which will essentially, that's another hit to them in this process. So I'm definitely on board with number 2. I don't want to go the full 2%, but is there something we can do to cover at least part of that healthcare cost increase and still be able to work ourselves out of this over time? And that's what I'd like a little. I mean, I keep asking for information as if that's going to solve it. I know it's not going to solve it.
I think we're only seeing half of the picture here, because we're also talking about vacation, how they accrue sick leave and comp time. I think that's the entire formula we need to look at to see how that's going to impact the city.
We do need to look at that. Thank you, Councilman Smith. That also is hard to calculate. Doesn't mean we won't, because we will as we bring forth these recommendations. It's not going to be an immediate general fund impact, though, because those costs are realized or hit the impact upon somebody separating or retiring. Part of the decision point, not to segue, but in making those is at what, knowing that this council values staff as I do, we're certainly not going to make those changes, I would not imagine, and have them impact those employees about ready to retire. We're most likely going to have to figure out ways to absorb people that we know or have served 20 years, 21, but there has to be some threshold. Does it start with new employees, such as myself, that have come on? Are we making those changes for now today, or do we pick another number, you know, employees with 9 years of service or under? We have to have some of that direction so we can start calculating what it is that we might be looking at. But none of that, for the most part, is going to help this in terms of the FY22 budget. But you're right, we do need to look at what do those numbers mean.
Couldn't we delay the 2% COLA increase based off of the new stimulus money coming? Figure out, hey, do we have enough money in order to do the 2%?
You can implement the 2% at any time in the fiscal year you would like. The 2% could be January 1st.
If I just may add just briefly on the ARP money, that we'll need to be careful with the accounting, because none of those funds can go towards a pension enhancement in any way. So that would include the normal piece of the salary that would go to pension out of the 2%. Not a big amount. I'm just letting you be aware of the strictures on
It
those
might not
funds.
be exactly 2%.
Exactly, right. That either way, even whatever we put people up to, their pensions will go up, right? I mean, we have a cost, you increase the salary, the pension cost goes with that. So we'd have to fill that in with another fund. You can do the 2% at any point. I'm going to add in, I'm appreciating the direction. We will need to, as we go into closed session, some of those 2% conversations will become evident on why we're talking about that in that conversation as well, related to the collective bargaining agreement and contract negotiation. So Neil, always stop me if I'm over speaking. So Councilmember Smith, to your point, accruals are incredibly important. The leave policy is generous, incredibly generous. It is not the full way out. Again, if we go back, bing, 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 bing.
Did you talk about conversion, Eric? Or
I did.
I'm sorry, not conversion of sick leave into more of a traditional standing, but in terms of people don't use their sick leave.
I can get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, here, just in this budget year in FY21, we have only gone up 553,000. That's with significant reductions, but that includes the payouts. We're jumping $1 million, not knowing what the payouts are going to be. It's $1 million increase to the general fund on personnel. And so the payouts are not driving the whole of that picture. There are other structural decisions that, we don't have to decide tonight, but it's our job to inform you that it's not just the nice, easy, simple thing with a benefit package. It's a multitude of factors that come together and create that issue. The sick leave conversion that the doctor was talking about, we have in our personnel policy, no matter how much sick leave time you accrue, which you'll still get paid out for, if you do not use it, so let's say you use only 0 to 16 hours, I believe in a year, we give you a couple extra vacation days, which you can accrue on top of and get paid out for as well. So we have a double benefit there of, that we're adding in, to encourage you not to use sick time, but you're now getting a vested property right interest in a vacation day, which we must pay out on.
So we convert 2 of those days, or we convert whatever you had.
No, it depends on how many you used. You don't ever convert any of them. So if I, as an employee, only use 1 sick day in a year, our policy is, okay, great. We're glad you didn't use a lot of sick time. We'll give you some extra vacation days, which you can sit on and, take all the way to the payout at the end.
Which is an incredibly kind thing to do, but I was trying to think of a better word. They are antiquated policies for smaller organizations, and we are not that. We're not a private organization. We're not a mom and pop shop. This is a governmental organization, and those policies have evolved over the last couple of decades. And so it's, again, but this is still, to the mayor's point and to your point, Laura, as well, we do have to monitor for morale. And so this is a lot of change that we'll be discussing. And just to be sure, we're not discussing that all of this is in place overnight. We want the recommendations from the classification and compensation RFP. And we have selected a vendor that will be coming to you June 1st in the council meeting. I should give an update on that. And it is a fairly local vendor as well. So that was exciting. But all that to say, we're looking at a slow approach. We want this to be several conversations. We want to do the right thing by employees, of course, but unfortunately the budget discussions and the COLA and the 1.5 does have to have more of an immediate response.
What's the timeline for the classification study?
If it is approved on June 1st.
Yes, right.
And how much is that study going to cost us?
Well, that depends on if you approve it, and I don't have it in front of me. What I can tell you is the ranges were from the most inexpensive
$30,000.
It's
It's around the
29, 30,000 all the way up to 85,000. And we had 7 responses, and they were all very good responses.
85,000.
Yes, ma'am.
That's not the one we chose.
Okay.
Can I get an answer on the timeline question though? If we approve it June 1st, what is our expectation of how long that might take?
Let me tell you after the break, because I'll go
Got it.
look at the, there is
Okay.
a whole timeline. It is before December, but I don't know where
Okay.
it falls down in there.
Thank you.
I think we have covered what we need to cover. You have lots of information out here. We've not made any decisions for right now. There's a lot here to think through, and
Don't we have to make a decision today on this?
I do need direction on that,
on
on the
this.
COLA and the 1.5%.
Okay, so you want the direction on that before we even take a break?
No, you're welcome to take a break.
All right, we'll take a break and then we'll come back and we'll make a decision on that and then open up our regular meeting. And open up our regular.
David.
Okay, are we, all right, we're going to go ahead and go into our regular meeting right now. And so I'd like to call our regular city council meeting to order. And again, if you have submitted remarks of visitors, we will, before 4 p.m. today, those will be entered into the record. Otherwise, I understand we have a number of people who are out there on Zoom, and unfortunately for most of us, we can't see who you are. And but if you do want to speak, please use the hands up function and someone will call on you. So we'll start with a roll call.
Mayor Welsh,
Here.
Councilmember Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander. Here. Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
All right, we'll begin tonight with remarks of visitors, and I think our deputy city clerk has a few to read.
All right. Our first one is from Timothy Farner, was received on May the 5th. It is with regret, pain, and yes, some anger that I am compelled to write this message. Having only recently gained knowledge of the property zoning change ordinance, I virtually attended the council meeting concerning it last night and experienced a total loss of confidence and faith in my local government. Particularly painful are the votes of those members whom I once vigorously supported for office. Watching the officials vote for this proposal after over 90% of resident messages denounced it is a spectacular testament to tone-deaf government. The sanctimonious insults of council members referring to dissenting residents as ill-informed, ignorant, and racist made the experience even more vexatious. All but 2 voting even had the audacity to do so while protecting their own properties from harm. Indeed, the disdain with which they hold their fellow residents is nothing short of breathtaking. I submit that disrupting neighborhoods and damaging the lifetime investments of residents is not a necessary element for the evolution of diversity in a community, if that is indeed the aim. Furthermore, how is diversity served when the new residents arrive at the detriment of those already living in the neighborhood? Would it not instead be more efficacious to find ways for low-income people to get loans and buy property? A simple internet search reveals several options for low-income buyers to afford a home. Was any of this even discussed? Such an approach would not only be acceptable to those already residing in the area, but would be a boost to the economic well-being of the incoming residents. An ownership approach would allow residents and potential residents to facilitate integration rather than leaving the shape of their neighborhood to the whims of developers. It was mentioned more than once that much research had been done to prove the dissenting commenters wrong. Why was it not at least a summary of it presented at the meeting when members must have known they would hear much opposition? This only contributes to considerable skepticism that it exists. If it does, where is it? It is your responsibility to validate your positions to the people on such a volatile issue. And without said information, it appears the height of arrogance to simply dismiss 50 to 100 opposing citizens. Finally, we affected residents may be at present powerless against your vote. Laura Arnold, Pam Bliss, Sarah Richardson. We do, however, look forward to future elections, and to quote the Quebecois, je me souviens. French and Latin in here tonight. This next one is from Wayne Davis and was received on May 9th. According to the newspaper, most citizens spoke against the zoning change, and yet you passed it anyway. Who are you representing? Obviously not us. Rosalind Croft, president on behalf of the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition, received May 17th. The North Webster Neighborhood Coalition is a group of residents that supports the planning commissions and city council's approval of the text amendments that make it easier to permit 2-family dwellings on some lots in A4 districts that are of specific size. The amendments also clarify large houses on small lots and help support a variety of residential housing types in the community. This is in compliance with the city's top goal to provide a broader mix of inclusive housing types for the community. The coalition's belief is that these changes in the text amendments are in keeping with the coalition's long-held vision of developing, collaborating, and fostering inclusion of residential and commercial development that creates and sustains a rich mix of racial, ethnic, social, and economic citizen groups. We are committed to supporting the city of Webster Groves as it continues to be a vibrant and forward-thinking community. Dave Buck received on the 17th. Mayor, council, and staff, SG Collaborative, and friends. This shares a small yet symbolic way SG Collaborative and their redevelopment project can further the council's effort to build greater diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in Webster Groves. It regards the proposed name Douglas Hill. As background, council's recent approval of the A4 rezoning proposal is a positive DEI step, as is the school board's recent approval of the new K-8 social studies curriculum and its corrected actual racial history. No one is doubting the role Frederick Douglass played in American racial history. The question is, what about our own proud, correct, and actual local racial history? The Douglass name is most associated with and cherished in the Black community of North Webster, where the Douglass School served this neighborhood for 86 years and Douglass Manor Apartments sits on its site. To many, the Douglass name already has a place and home in North Webster. More importantly, in 1866, a year after the Civil War ended, Former slaves built the First Baptist Church where Old Community Baptist Church now sits, in Porter subdivision, which included Shady Creek. In its basement, the church also housed the first school for Black children in St. Louis County. Behind the church, the subdivision stretched up the hill to the area called Vinegar Hill, where many of the former slaves lived. In short, this area represents significant and special Black history in our town and the establishment of our first Black leadership, faith, freedom, land ownership, and education. There's always more than one right answer. Douglas Hill is certainly an option, but what about celebrating our local Black history in this area via Vinegar Hill, Porter's Crossing, or Shady Creek Station? Or Webster streets are named for many who built our town. So what about celebrating famous local Black residents like Ambrose Corner, Robinson Connection, etc.? There's always more than one right answer. I hope we consider others before deciding. This is from Bud Belomo, was received on the 18th. As a resident in an A4 zone of Webster Groves, I'm writing to you in full support of your approval of the zoning code text amendments for 2-family dwellings. Some may not know that increasing the amount of affordable housing has been the written top goal of the council for many years. The physical constraints of our city, however, significantly limit options to consider that could achieve that goal. As a former council member, I worked with you and with others I served with on a previous council to find a way that would lead to more affordable and diverse housing opportunities. We recognize the existing need for affordable housing for first-time home buyers and renters, as well as for empty nesters and seniors who no longer wanted to live in a large house, but do want to stay in Webster Groves. To be clear, I know and others should know that these limited text amendments do not rezone any of our city and will not significantly change neighborhoods because a large number of houses in A4 zones are on lots too small to allow for 2-family homes. For those in our community who agree with the council's goal for additional affordable homes, but are against the text amendments, I would have 2 questions. If not this, what? If not now, when? Daniel Berzini, received May 18th. Municipality comes from the Latin municipalis, pertaining to a citizen of a free town that needs infrastructure, police, fire, and EMS. It is about the needs of all citizens, not the special interests or politics of some citizens. The nature of municipal government is supposed to be nonpartisan, beholden to no particular citizen group, no favoritism, and certainly not as members of any special interest group who stand to benefit from their decisions. Simply put, sewers, potholes, and public safety aren't partisan issues. It is high time the city council refocus on these essential mundane municipal priorities, especially given its current financial crisis. Fiscal year 2020 ended with an $859,000 deficit. Fiscal year 2021 to April 16th, 2021 is an actual $1.92 million in debt that a one-time CARES Act with its trickle-down $1 trillion federal bailout reduced to $335 of debt. The upcoming July 2021 to June 2022 fiscal year 2022 draft budgets projects a $2.4 million deficit. On top of these $1 million budget issues, we have $1 million maintenance issues. $1.6 million are needed for City Hall and Service Center repairs. Still, there are plans for a new $6 million aquatic center. The City Council hired a second public relations firm for the SG Collaborative's Douglas Hill Old Webster redevelopment project. Webster's rapidly diminishing $10 million reserve fund won't last long under the city's current overspending on things other than sewers, potholes, and public safety. Like any family budget, niceties are put aside for necessities during lean times. It is unconscionable to threaten cuts for necessary services in order to protect pet projects. Do not use the financial crisis and lack of maintenance planning you failed to do as justification to renew your push for more tax increases. The residents of Webster Groves have not been ungenerous, having already approved 12 special tax increases in addition to accepting high property taxes. The City Council must focus on the nonpartisan issues that are the duty and purpose of municipal government: sewers, potholes, and public safety. Trust the people of Webster Groves to make it a great place to live, work, and raise a family. We trust you to be responsible stewards of our tax dollars. Nemo dat quod non habet. No one can give what they do not have. That is it for the submitted ones. Let's see if there are any raised hands. Well done.
Thank you, Jen. Are there any raised hands?
I do not see any. I was in a second if you want. I don't see any hands up.
Jen, your Latin pronunciation was exquisite.
Oh.
Thank you. All right, that does it for remarks of visitors. I don't believe we have any new business, so we'll go, or the number 3 new business, so we'll go to number 4 new business, which is to set the public hearing date. And I think that all we have to do is announce that. There's nothing that we need to vote on. So we are announcing that the fiscal year 2022 proposed budget, June 1st, 2021, will be held, the public hearing will be held at 7:30 PM in the council chambers as well as through teleconference. All right, we're going to move on to Bill 9149, and Councilwoman Richardson, would you call for its first and second reading?
I'd be glad to. I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9149.
Second.
Bill 9149, first reading. An ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending chapter 33, section 33.232, goats, and amending section 33.310, keeping of wild animals prohibited and matters related thereto.
Are there any questions or issues or comments?
I would just like to thank the city attorney for working through this, especially for our resident who is going to rehab animals. And I know you just wanted to put goats in something.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And let's have that second reading, Neil.
Bill 9149, second reading. An ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending chapter 33, section 33.232, goats, and amending section 33.310, keeping of wild animals prohibited and matters related thereto.
Okay. Does anyone care to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, Councilwoman Bliss, could you call for its approval?
Certainly, Mayor. I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander. Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Mayor Welch.
Yes. All right, we are appointing 2 folks to boards and commissions this evening. We are appointing CC Bartels now officially to the Business Development Commission. And the school district replacement for John Thomas on the Police Community Engagement Board is Tina Clark Scott, and she will be the new appointee on the PCEB. And with that, I'd like to call for an executive closed session.
Mayor, before we do, could I say one thing? There's some information I want to provide you as a board. We have received a potential petition for a referendum regarding the A4 ordinance. And as a consequence, there is some time issues that I want to make everyone aware of. And I think it would bear certainly stating for the public who are listening what that time schedule is. So if I may, under our charter, section 14, we have specific provisions for what happens in the event of a referendum. Once a referendum has been turned in, and there was one turned in today, once it's been turned in, the city clerk has 15 days to certify the petition. Again, that is set forth in our charter. And that means that she has to verify that all of the signatures are correct and accurate, that everyone is there. That's done in conjunction with the Board of Election Commissioners in St. Louis County. Once that is done and it is certified as sufficient under the charter, meaning that it's met the minimum that is required under the charter provisions, which we believe is 498 voters. Is that right, Katie?
I believe it's 428 is the
I'm sorry,
minimum.
428 voters, okay? 428 voters. If all of those signatures are sufficient, then it will be certified to you for reconsideration. It must be reconsidered, and that's supposed to happen at your next meeting after certification. At that point, you have 30 days in which to certify. Now, I want to make you aware of this timing though. If we want to get it on the August ballot, and again, ultimately, once we have voted one way or another to either repeal it or not repeal it, we have to have it on a ballot within 90 days. So the only ballot that we can actually reach is the August ballot. Otherwise, we would have to have an entire special election, and the cost of that would be prohibitive. Normally, we would have to have everything in by May 25th. Obviously, under our time frame, we don't get in under May 25th. But I've been on the phone with the Board of Election Commissioners, and they have said that there is a 2-week grace period. if we were to let them know that we received this, they could actually extend our request for inclusion on the ballot to June the 8th. Our next meeting after that 15 days, if Katie has 15 days to do it, that would put us in that first week of June. We actually have our first meeting on June the 1st. It's a little bit close because that, of course, is backing up the Memorial Day weekend, so we lose a day in there. But if we can get it done by then, and you can vote that night to either repeal or not repeal, then we can go to the Board of Election Commissioners by that June 8th date and get it on the August ballot. So I make you aware of that because we're going to be moving a little bit quickly, and obviously we'll let you know as we're going on. Katie, do you concur with my reading of the dates?
Yes, I will hustle.
Okay. Okay, so that's just informational so that people know what we're doing and when we're doing it.
How many signatures were turned in?
Well, there was 129 pages, so I haven't counted each signature, but it's probably more than double the requirement.
Say that again. Double the requirement. Did you say?
Probably,
Sorry.
yes.
I didn't-
I'm sorry.
That's all I have.
Well, thank you. Thank you. All right, now we can call for the closed session. Councilwoman Arnold.
And I would suggest that it be under sections 1, 3, and 9.
I don't have 9.
9 is, well, do 4.
make it up.
4 will do.
4 will do?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session under number 1, attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open paren 1, close paren. 3, personnel, Missouri statute 610.021, open paren 3, close paren, and 4, negotiated contract, Missouri statute 610.021, open paren 12, close paren.
I have a second.
Second,
All right. Councilmember Bliss,
yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander, Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
All right.
Give us a minute to shut everything down.